This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. My guest today is Liz Campos, a figure for social and environmental justice in Ventura. Because Ventura County is heating up faster than any other place in the country, I invited Liz on the show to continue our coverage of women who are working to mitigate the effects of climate change. Liz is the chair of the Westside Community Council and is a candidate for Ventura City Council District 1. We're so happy to have you here today, Liz.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen. Hello, listeners. Nice to meet you all.
Okay. Well, let's just jump in to the action that you have led in achieving a pause in SoCalGas's efforts to expand the gas compressor station on the west side of Ventura. But first, would you explain what a gas compressor station is? I know, but I didn't know what it was until recently when I talked with you. What it is, what it holds, and why it is dangerous to have this compressor in a residential area.
A gas compressor basically is a big machine that pressurizes gas so that it will move along pipelines to the next location.
Oh.
There's 1,500 miles of pipelines between Texas and here. Our gas comes from Texas.
Oh,
so there are about 25 compressor stations. By the time it gets to the west side of Ventura, the pressure is low, and they have to pressurize it to move it north to Santa Barbara and Goleta and San Luis Obispo.
So they have to kind of pump it up to get it out there.
That's right, about every 60 miles.
Oh.
So there's 25 gas compressors between Texas and here. Most of them are out in the desert or in isolated areas of counties. We're the only one that we have identified in the country that is less than 1.5 miles from communities. And our gas compressor sits 170 feet from an elementary school playground.
Oh my gosh.
200 feet from the door of the elementary school.
Now, do these leak, or what is the danger involved?
Well, the National Resources Defense Council a couple of weeks ago published that there are 70 organic compounds and chemicals that are cancer-causing chemicals used in the pressurization of toxic gas, which they call natural, that can spew into the environment at a wind speed of 3 miles per hour. They can be carried 5 miles away. And this compressor is 150 feet from the schoolyard. They cause health problems such as, especially in children, nosebleeds, very severe asthma, lung infections and diseases, vision problems, headaches. And then in adults, they can cause cancers and respiratory diseases and high blood pressure and heart disease.
Now, are children in the elementary school actually experiencing some of these symptoms?
Yes. Several parents have pulled their children and moved them to the charter school or moved them to schools around town near where the parents work, even though they live in the neighborhood, because the children have started to experience those symptoms. Many children who enter the elementary school in kindergarten and first grade enter healthy, but by third grade, they're suffering asthma so severe that they cannot play or run on the playground.
Oh, that is sad. So, well, we have part of the answer here, but my question is, why is this an environmental justice issue as well as a health and safety issue?
Well, first of all, safety also is because gas compressors can explode without notice, like one did in San Bruno, California several years ago. So that's another danger. It's an environmental justice issue, and I believe a social justice issue, because it's sitting in a neighborhood full of people of color, people who, our neighborhood is still on this federal and state list of historically disadvantaged neighborhoods. It's a working class neighborhood where people in Ventura today have to work sometimes 3 jobs to pay their rent. 70% of the neighborhood is Latina or Latino. There's a lot of Chumash Native Americans still there,
Oh,
and seniors and people living below the poverty level. So that's a environmental justice zone if ever there was one.
right. And I suppose, the people there who have children going to the school, some of them can't really, negotiate the whole thing to send their children to another school.
It's difficult because although Ventura School District has a choice of schools, you can move your children, but the numbers are limited.
Oh,
This compressor station also sits 3 blocks away from the city of Ventura's largest housing authority project, the Westside Village project, which
uh-huh.
houses 300 families, probably 1,000 total, including children. And so it's dangerous no matter which direction the wind blows. And it doesn't belong in a neighborhood.
Right. So what do you want SoCal Gas to do? Close it down or move it or,
Well, it's an interesting question right now because the governor has issued an order to stop fossil fuel use. But I believe that at the very least, SoCal Gas should move away from where they're sitting. A study's been done and some sites have been identified. And right now, the city and county and several coalitions, the Westside Clean Air Coalition, the Ventura Climate Coalition, VC Safe, and several people are working to try and get it to move. SoCal Gas stubbornly likes to say, well, we were here first. 100 years ago, they built their compressor and opened it about 3 weeks before the school, which took 4 years to build. So they've sat side by side for 100 years. So you can imagine the toxic nature of the soil on the playground.
right.
It's
Oh my
also
goodness.
affected the Ventura River.
We've got that environmental justice issue in mind. But let's move on to the Westside Community Council. Now, you're the chair of that. And I was wondering, how did you get involved with this nonprofit? And how long have you been with the council?
I've attended council meetings on and off for 15 years. They're easy to follow on Facebook and their website. So if they were addressing a topic I was interested in, I would go to a meeting. About 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I started attending regularly. And for the last 4.5 to 5 years, I've been on the board.
Uh-huh. Well, so what is the mission of the Westside Community Council?
The Westside Community Council was developed to somewhat protect the neighborhood, protect the Avenue district from becoming a bedroom community by developers moving in and buying up everything, and also to protect the residents' health and safety. Initially, in 1996, they were established, and initially they took on a battle with the city about a firing range that still today sits on top of the hill on the east side of the avenue at Kellogg. That firing range at that time allowed all residents to use it as well as use for police. That battle got it restricted to only police, but the children in the neighborhood still suffered traumatic effects of waking up in the morning to gunshots at the firing range. And so we brought that battle back 1.5 years ago, and we haven't been able to move the compressor station or the firing range, but the police are doing a study right now to see if they can stop the noise, because it's an open air firing range, stop the noise with a curtain kind of effect surrounding their shooting area.
Oh,
And so
okay.
that research is going on, and we're grateful to the police chief for taking that on. Although for me, 70 years of lead bullets being shot into the hillside is a terrible environmental problem, because When it rains, it hasn't lately, but when it does rain, all of that lead leaches down through the soil into the neighborhoods.
Oh my gosh. So, how does the council actually work? I mean, people attend the meeting, perhaps voice their, their grievances or their issues. Then what happens? Does a board take it up? I mean, who goes to the police or to the SoCal Gas, or how does that all happen?
So the general meetings happen the first Wednesday of every month, and anybody is welcome to attend them.
Oh,
The agenda and Zoom link are listed on our Facebook page and website. The meetings are hybrid. So people without internet access, which is a big problem in my neighborhood, can come and attend the meeting at Bell Arts. At Bell Arts, we also have Spanish interpretation because a lot of our neighborhood is Spanish speakers, native Spanish speakers.
right.
The board meets the following week. And also we utilize email with the community to get information from them, to hear complaints from them, or to support them in their endeavors. So if they want a topic heard at the community council, they email us and we schedule that. Last night we had the general plan consultant speak more about the land use management specifically in our neighborhoods and the west part of downtown. That meeting was 2.5 hours long because the residents had a lot to say.
There's also an East Side Community Council. So are the West and East Side councils unique to Ventura, or are there other examples of this sort of forum in other cities?
Many cities in Southern California have community councils.
Oh,
I never experienced one when I was living in Northern California. However, it's not just the West Side and East Side community councils. There are 7 community council districts in the city of Ventura. 2 of them are both covered by the East Side Community Council. There's one in Montalvo, one in Pierpont, one college area, a downtown area. And if you go on the city website, you can search neighborhood councils and get a list with their contact information or website.
oh, okay. So that would be a good way for our listener to get in touch with you. Go to the City of Ventura website and you can find it there.
It's westsidecommunitycouncil.org.
Okay, easy to remember. So
And
if
we're
you,
also on Facebook, Westside Community Council.
okay, well, that's good. So our, listeners, if they have an issue they want to talk about, they can get in touch right there and attend meetings.
That's
Okay,
it.
so what are some other issues on the West Side that you've worked to resolve? And you mentioned that you're working on, the shooting range, but what are some other things that come up that you have experience with?
Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, when the shutdown began, we very quickly learned how many people on the West Side do not have internet access. They don't have access to broadband and they can't afford Wi-Fi installed in their homes. And so that's when we began Zoom meetings and quickly found we needed to have some in-person access. And we did provide interpretation on Zoom at that time, but for the people who don't have Zoom, we needed to be in a public space.
Right.
So we worked with the city and the libraries, and the Agency on Aging provided 1,000 Chromebooks to the library system that people could check out. They could get on the internet that way. Unfortunately, Chromebooks won't hook into Zoom easily. And so that left a lot of people still out of the community meetings. But it is a resolution for other internet access and for email access.
Right, right. So are you still kind of looking for answers to that issue?
The city has identified a company that they want to contract with to build broadband cables all over the city, but it starts on the east side and comes west. So it's going to be 6 or 7 years before the west side sees it.
Oh,
So I've been looking at state programs and other options for the West Side
right.
because the state has a lot going on.
Go
We
ahead.
also identified food security problems on the West Side during the pandemic shutdown because so many people on the West Side bike to work or use public transportation. So we began a food program at that time during the pandemic to home deliver the food bank food rather than people having to drive through and pick it up. Seniors and single mothers with kids who couldn't walk to a distribution center, we delivered food to twice a month.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, what would you say is the most valuable information and experience you've gotten from working with the folks in the West Side neighborhood?
Well, the people on the West Side are people like everywhere. It's a disadvantaged community because of uh, agricultural chemical dumping and the oil industry and gas industry for a century. But the people, no matter who they are, where they're from, if they're American or citizens of other countries, what race, what language, when something happens on the West Side, they all stand together.
Oh,
Rich
wonderful.
or poor, a lot of people complain and say, oh, the gangs are bad on the West Side. But I roll my wheelchair up and down the avenue, sometimes late at night, coming home from city meetings, and no one's ever harmed me. Everybody has treated me with great dignity and respect.
Well, that's good to hear. So, this leads us to your personal story and how you came to work on climate change and how we can mitigate it. Would you acquaint your listener with your story? And you start with you're a native Californian, right?
Yes, I was born in Glendale. The hospital I was born in was Glendale. My family lived in Pasadena.
Ah, uh-huh.
And so I'm a native.
How much more Californian can you get than Pasadena?
Yeah, yes, exactly. However, during my high school years, we moved to Arizona for 4 years because my father got a contract for some work. And during those years, I became the president of my high school science club, just at the time when people were talking about the greenhouse effect.
Ah,
So we brought some scientists from UCLA to Arizona to explain what the greenhouse effect meant and what it meant to communities at the ocean as opposed to communities in the desert. Well, they let us know that it had no difference no matter where you lived. And at that time, they believed what we are experiencing right now today was about 250 years away.
wow. And boy, it's
Yes.
come a lot faster. And on that note, we're going to have to take a station ID. This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the women's room where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good. My guest today is Liz Campos, a figure for social and environmental justice in Ventura. I invited Liz on the show to continue our coverage of women who are working to mitigate the effects of climate change. Liz is also the chair of the Westside Community Council. And we're back, and we were just talking about your early years, learning about the greenhouse effect. So you were really an early Greta Thunberg. I mean, you were addressing, well, tell us what you were doing, even in
Yeah,
high school.
yes, I certainly didn't, I would not call myself a bold environmentalist like Greta, who really brought this to the world. But I did start public engagement. I started speaking at city and county agencies very young and went to college to learn about chemistry and environmental science. I traveled around the world and got to know different environments and different cultures. And I just began to live my life in every way possible to protect the climate and speak about it. I was there at the first Earth Day. I was part of the organizing of that effort in Phoenix right before I graduated from high school and came back.
Well, very cool. So to move to another topic, because we're running out of time, as always, another passion of yours is housing. So could you talk about housing, the idea that affordable housing in Ventura is pretty much an oxymoron, right? I mean, you've really got to have a good job to even afford an apartment here.
It's true.
So how much does HUD, now that's the Housing Urban Development, say a family should pay monthly for a 2-bedroom apartment? Well, and then just tell your listener how much that same apartment costs in Ventura.
So HUD does an evaluation of the fair market rent, the rent that should be paid across the country every year, but they don't say one price for the whole country. So in Ventura County, HUD says $2,200 is the maximum that a family living in a 2-bedroom unit should pay. And they would consider as many as 6 people living in a 2-bedroom unit because they consider the living room can be used as bedroom space.
Oh.
So even at that, the new buildings that have gone up and were followed quickly by rents in neighborhoods last March were $3,400 to $3,800 a month for a 2-bedroom unit. And last week I saw advertising from $4,700 to $5,000 for those same units for a 2-bedroom.
2-bedroom.
Proximity to the ocean raises the price.
Oh my gosh.
And also Ventura's short-term vacation rental system is deficient and doesn't have good enforcement. So there are many illegal units, and short-term vacation rentals take rental property off the market for the common person.
Okay, so is this one of the highest residential areas in the States?
I believe that San Diego, San Francisco, Santa Clara County, Marin, Mendocino, Carmel, Santa Barbara are all equivalent.
Oh, right.
They may have higher fair market rents from HUD, but that's matched by higher rents than we're experiencing today. And so coastal California is one of the most desirable places to live. We're not the warmest in the country yet. We are the fastest warming, and Ventura County is warming faster than the other coastal regions.
Right. Yeah, that's what I heard. So when you're talking about homeless, you're not talking about vagrancy and the criminal element, are you? These are the folks. Who are these folks who need housing, and why do folks end up homeless besides the great cost of apartments?
Right, and that is a huge factor, is the cost. When you think about the word vagrancy, it comes from vagabond, which is people who move from place to place with no set house. A lot of the homeless who we see in the city of Ventura and county of Ventura are always here because they had homes here and they lost their homes and they're now just searching or trying to survive. So many people who are unsheltered are living on their friends' couches. Many live in cars, but seniors who are homeless tend to live in cars and not be visible as much as possible. We have a lot of unsheltered people living in boats, in studios, artist studios, living in offices that 3 or 4 will rent together and use at night for sleeping space.
Wow.
That gives them a bathroom available.
Right.
There's, homelessness can be caused by so many things. Domestic violence is a major cause of homelessness for women. LGBTQ young people coming out to their parents gets them kicked out of home. So many of them end up going through a period of homelessness. Children who are abused run away and never go home rightfully. Older women whose husbands died and always took care of everything can be homeless. So it is a big, huge issue.
So have you thought about things that could be done, if we had the policy and if we had the money?
Well, we need better ordinances, an inclusionary housing ordinance that applies to rental properties as well as purchase properties would change the mix radically.
Oh, what would that mean, inclusionary housing?
Inclusionary
phrase.
housing means that when a project is built, it includes availability of units for other income levels, low income, very low income, and extremely low income, two of
Oh,
which are in California below the poverty level. Right now, we don't have that.
right. So these are the homeless people or the people living in their cars or in couches or,
Families, there's children who are homeless in Ventura right now.
right.
Whenever the schools identify them, they work very hard to get them housed. It happens over and over.
Well, it seems a way to turn the climate crisis around as well as the housing crisis is with policies of governing bodies that curtail drastically, the
Correct.
use of fossil fuels and other greenhouse gases, while at the same time getting everyone on board to do their part. Would you speak to this statement and then talk about some ways people could get on board?
Well, one thing is the government has held off speaking about climate issues. I've gone for 5 years, many times, and asked them to declare a climate emergency. Doing that frees up federal dollars and state dollars that our city has lost to do things that are helpful, like electric charging stations. We have many people driving electric cars in Ventura, but they have few places to charge except their home. And there are many, none of us can fix the whole thing at once. And hearing about climate change and seeing video of glaciers falling doesn't help us be confident and positive. But if everybody recycled, if we stopped buying paper cups for our coffee and carry our own cups, don't use plastic bags at the grocery store, carry a cloth bag, limit your water use. I water my fruit trees by using a dehydrator in the house, and then I get gallons and gallons with our current humidity and water my fruit trees, and then I have the fruit to eat. So everybody just needs to choose their battle and then stick with it.
Right. And you also talked a little bit, and I really liked your common sense approach to having folks cut down on animal consumption. And I really liked your suggestion as a way to go about doing that. In other words, they don't have to immediately become vegans. What could they do?
Well, there's the vegan world says do meatless Mondays and do fishless Fridays. I know we grew up having only fish on Fridays, many of us, but if you just cut out particularly red meat, all deforestation is focused on pasture land. Do your part, eat more fruits and vegetables. They're there for us. They're delicious.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Liz Campos, for coming in to tell us about your work with the Westside Community Council. And you're talking about climate change and housing. Thank you all for listening in. This is KPPQ LP Ventura, 104.1 FM, and we're in the Women's Room, where we appreciate and support each other. I'm your host, Kathleen Good.